Welcome to the deep dive. We're tackling a question that's, well, I guess you could say it's both timeless and surprisingly relevant. What really makes us happy? We're diving deep into the science of happiness research, anecdotes, and even some practical tips you can try out. Our guide for this exploration is Raghunathan's book, If You're So Smart, Why Aren't You Happy?
This deep dive is intriguing because we're not just skimming feel-good platitudes, we're going beyond the surface to understand the habits, and yes, even the sins that influence our well-being. The book frames this in a thought-provoking way. Imagine a genie grants you 3 wishes. Would happiness even make your list?
That's a good question. You'd think happiness would be at the top right, but the book highlights that many people would instead wish for things like wealth, fame, attractiveness.
This reveals what Raghunathan calls the first sin on the path to happiness. Devaluing happiness itself. We often chase after things we believe will make us happy, rather than prioritizing happiness as a goal in its own right.
So it's like we're looking for happiness in all the wrong places. But the book makes a compelling case that lasting happiness isn't about external factors like winning the lottery. Instead, it comes down to 3 core elements.
Those elements are strong social connections, a sense of purpose, and a positive outlook on life. What's fascinating is that these aren't things that just happen to us. They're areas we can actively cultivate.
That's empowering. So much of the happiness conversation focuses on things outside our control. But this suggests we actually have more agency than we realize. But then the question becomes, if these elements are so crucial, why do we get caught up chasing money status or other things that don't actually bring lasting joy?
That's the heart of what Raghunathan calls the fundamental happiness paradox. We often make choices that contradict their own well-being, driven by things like impressing others or seeking superiority, even when those pursuits come at the cost of our own happiness.
It's almost as if we sabotage ourselves. So how do we break free from these self-defeating patterns? The book dives into 7 deadly sins that hinder our happiness. I'm curious to unpack these further. These sins aren't about morality in a traditional sense. They're patterns of thinking and behavior that create unhappiness. Let's consider one example, the sin of chasing superiority.
Okay, that's something we see everywhere. Our culture constantly bombards us with messages about being the best, outdoing others, striving for external validation. Makes you wonder what that does to our inner sense of peace.
The book argues that this relentless pursuit of superiority fuels materialism and a fixation on external validation, ultimately underlying true happiness. It becomes a relentless cycle.
It's like a hamster wheel. We're constantly running but getting nowhere. And this isn't the only sin we grapple with, is it? What about the need to be loved?
That's another powerful one. While connection is a fundamental human need, the book suggests that when this desire becomes desperate or needy, it can actually sabotage our relationships.
So it's not the need for connection itself that's the problem, but the way we approach it. The book seems to offer a more nuanced perspective on this. Exactly. The book suggests that this sin often stems from insecurity. We become so fixated on being loved that we lose sight of our inherent worth and the value we bring to relationships. We end up seeking validation externally rather than cultivating it from within.
Sounds like a recipe for disappointment. But if these sins are so ingrained in our thinking, is there any hope for us? I'm hoping the book offers some solutions.
Don't worry, there's a silver lining. The book also presents 7 corresponding habits that can act as antidotes to these happiness-blocking sins. These habits offer practical ways to shift our thinking and behavior, leading to greater fulfillment.
Okay, I'm definitely ready to hear more about these habits. Let's delve into the first one. What does the book recommend as an antidote to this sin of chasing superiority?
Raghunathan suggests cultivating the habit of pursuing flow. It's a concept you might be familiar with, that feeling of complete absorption in an activity where time seems to mark away.
Ah, yes. Like when you're so engaged in a project that you completely lose track of time. It's a fantastic feeling.
Precisely. And the book emphasizes that finding flow isn't limited to your dream job or grand passions. It's about actively seeking out activities that challenge you in an engaging and rewarding way, no matter what the task might be.
So it's about bringing that sense of engagement and joy to everyday life. Not just waiting for those rare moments of inspiration, I'm liking this already. But what about generosity? Is that one of the habits as well?
It certainly is. The book explores the intriguing link between giving to others and experiencing greater happiness ourselves. It delves beyond surface-level niceness and examines the deeper impact generosity has on our well-being.
It seems counterintuitive. You'd think focusing on your own happiness would be the most direct route. But the book suggests otherwise.
The research is quite compelling. Studies show that generosity boosts our sense of meaning and purpose, which are key ingredients for lasting happiness. In fact, one study found that spending money on others resulted in more happiness than spending it on oneself.
Wow, that's a powerful finding. It challenges the common assumption that self-indulgence is the key to happiness. What other surprises does the book hold regarding these habits?
Well, let's talk about the sin of being overly controlling. Whether it's trying to control other people or desperately trying to control every outcome in life, this desire for control can be a major obstacle to happiness.
Hmm. It's easy to fall into that trap. We all crave a sense of certainty and order, especially in a world that often feels chaotic. But the book argues that this need for control backfires.
The book suggests that this sin often arises from a lack of what it calls internal control, the ability to regulate our own thoughts and emotions. When we lack this internal control, we desperately seek to manage everything around us, which is ultimately an impossible task.
So instead of trying to control everything external, we should focus on cultivating inner peace and stability. Does the book offer any guidance on how to develop that internal control?
It certainly does. It provides insightful techniques for strengthening our inner resilience. One technique involves focusing on what we can control rather than dwelling on what we can't. It's about shifting our energy towards constructive action instead of getting stuck in worries and anxieties.
That makes sense. It's easy to get bogged down in the things we can't change. But focusing on our sphere of influence feels much more empowering. I'm curious, though, what about mindfulness? It's a buzzword these days, but does the book address its relevance to happiness?
Mindfulness plays a significant role in the book's framework. It's presented as a powerful tool for developing that internal control we were just discussing. The book clarifies that mindfulness isn't about emptying your mind or achieving some kind of blissful detachment. It's about paying attention to the present moment without judgment, simply observing your thoughts, feelings, and sensations with curiosity and acceptance.
That sounds like a valuable skill, especially in our fast-paced, distraction-filled world. But is it really something anyone can learn? I imagine it takes years of meditation practice to achieve that level of awareness.
The book emphasizes that mindfulness is a practice, not a destination. It's something we cultivate gradually through dedicated effort, and like any skill, the more we practice, the better we become at it. One of the simplest and most accessible ways to practice mindfulness is through focused attention on your breath.
Oh, I've heard about that, but I've always been skeptical. How can something as simple as breathing actually lead to greater happiness?
The book explains the science behind it. Your breath is a powerful anchor for mindfulness because it's always present, constantly changing, and readily accessible. By focusing on the sensation of your breath, you train your mind to become more aware and present in each moment.
That makes sense. It's like having a built-in tool for calming the mental chatter and grounding ourselves in the present. I can see how that would lead to greater peace of mind.
The benefits go beyond just feeling calmer. Research demonstrates that mindfulness can reduce stress, improve sleep quality, and even enhance cognitive function.
Wow, those are compelling reasons to give mindfulness a try. It seems like a gift we can give ourselves to cultivate inner peace and resilience amidst the everyday chaos of life. But what about trust? Does the book explore the role of trust in happiness?
Absolutely. The book dedicates a significant portion to the concept of smart trust, which emphasizes finding the balance between being trusting and discerning. It's about recognizing that trust is essential for happiness and connection, but it also acknowledges the need for caution and wisdom in who we choose to trust.
That resonates with me. We live in a world where we're constantly bombarded with messages about being wary and guarded. But at the same time, we all crave connection and belonging, which requires some level of trust. So how do we navigate this delicate balance?
The book offers practical strategies for cultivating smart trust. One strategy involves reminding ourselves that people are generally more trustworthy than we tend to assume. It's about challenging our negativity bias and actively looking for evidence of trustworthiness in others.
That's a helpful reminder. It's easy to get caught up in the negativity and forget that most people are inherently good. But what about the times when trust is broken? How do we deal with betrayal or disappointment?
The book addresses this directly. It emphasizes the importance of minimizing the pain of being cheated. This doesn't mean becoming naive or letting people walk all over us. It's about developing resilience and the ability to forgive.
Forgiveness is a powerful concept. I imagine the book delves into the psychological benefits of letting go resentment and anger.
It does. The book highlights that forgiveness isn't about condoning harmful behavior. It's about releasing ourselves from the burden of those negative emotions. Forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves, not the person who wronged us.
That's a profound perspective. I can see how holding on to anger and resentment would only perpetuate unhappiness. But is there anything we can do to encourage trustworthiness in others?
That's an excellent question, and the book provides some guidance on this as well. One key suggestion is to be trustworthy ourselves. It's about modeling the behavior we want to see in others, demonstrating integrity and reliability in our interactions.
So it's about creating a culture of trust through our own actions. That makes a lot of sense. But is there more to it than just being a good person?
The book also emphasizes the importance of setting clear expectations and boundaries in our relationships. This helps create a sense of safety and predictability, making it easier for others to understand how to engage with us in a trustworthy manner.
So it's about creating a framework for healthy and trusting interactions. I can see how that would be beneficial in all kinds of relationships, from personal to professional. This has been a fascinating exploration of the sins and habits outlined in the book. Is there anything else you think we should highlight in this first part of our deep dive?
One final idea I find intriguing is the concept of dispassionate pursuit of passion. It might seem counterintuitive, but the book explains why this approach can be so powerful.
That sounds like a paradox. Isn't passion all about intense emotion and drive? How can you pursue something passionately without being attached to the outcome?
It's a subtle but important distinction. The book argues that true fulfillment comes from pursuing our goals and dreams with enthusiasm and dedication. But without becoming overly fixated on the end result, it's about finding joy in the journey itself, regardless of the destination.
I could see how that would create a more resilient and joyful experience. Instead of constantly striving for some future point of happiness, we can appreciate the process and find fulfillment in each step along the way.
Exactly. The book uses a brilliant analogy to illustrate this: a skilled surfer riding a wave. They don't try to control the wave. Instead, they ride it with grace and flexibility, adapting to its unpredictable movements.
That's a fantastic analogy. It perfectly captures the essence of this idea. Instead of fighting against the currents of life, we can learn to flow with them, finding joy and meaning in the unfolding of our journey.
Precisely. We'll explore these ideas further in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it.
Welcome back to our exploration of happiness. We've laid the groundwork by examining the sins that hinder our well-being, but now it's time to shift gears and delve into the habits that can propel us toward a more fulfilling life.
I'm eager to unpack these habits and discover how we can practically apply them. In the last part, we explored the idea of pursuing flow as an antidote to the sin of chasing superiority. Where do we go from there?
Let's explore the habit of prioritizing happiness itself. This might sound obvious, yet, as we discussed, many of us unknowingly fall into the trap of chasing things that we believe will bring happiness instead of making happiness the goal.
It's like we put happiness on the back burner, assuming it will magically appear once we achieve certain milestones or acquire specific possessions. But the book challenges that assumption, doesn't it?
The book highlights a fascinating study where participants had to choose between two jobs. One offered a high salary but was uninspiring, while the other offered less pay but aligned with their interests and passions.
So it's a classic dilemma: follow your heart or chase the big paycheck. I'm guessing most people said they'd choose the fulfilling job if happiness was their top priority.
You're absolutely right. However, when asked to imagine themselves in that situation, a significant number opted for the higher paying job, even though they acknowledged it would likely be less fulfilling.
Interesting. So there's a disconnect between what we say we value and how we actually behave. It seems like our choices are often influenced by factors beyond our conscious awareness.
This underscores the powerful influence of societal pressures and implicit biases. We might claim to prioritize happiness, but our actions sometimes tell a different story. The book suggests a practical exercise to bridge this gap.
I'm all ears. What can we do to align our choices with our desire for happiness?
It involves consciously incorporating happiness into our decision-making process. Before making a choice, ask yourself, will this genuinely enhance my happiness, or am I swayed by external factors?
Okay, so it's like having a mental checklist to assess the potential impact on our well-being before we commit to a decision. I can see how that simple shift in awareness could make a big difference. But let's move on to another habit. We touched upon the importance of cultivating generosity, but I'm eager to explore that further.
Generosity is a fascinating aspect of happiness. The book delves into research demonstrating how giving to others can surprisingly boost our own well-being. It goes beyond simple acts of kindness and examines the deeper psychological mechanisms at play.
One of the most compelling findings we discussed was that spending money on others brought greater happiness than spending it on oneself. Are there other studies that support this link between generosity and happiness?
There's a wealth of research in this area. For instance, studies show that volunteering our time can actually increase our lifespan. It seems counterintuitive, but dedicating ourselves to helping others can have a profound positive impact on our own health and longevity.
Wow, that's incredible. It seems like generosity is a win-win situation. It benefits both the recipient and the giver in profound ways. But what about the habit of gaining internal control? We talked about this in the context of overcoming the sin of being overly controlling. Can we expand on how to develop this internal control?
Internal control is about recognizing that while we can't control everything that happens to us, we can control our reactions. It's about cultivating the ability to regulate our emotions and thoughts, which leads to greater stability and resilience.
Right, it's about shifting from a reactive state to a more proactive and empowered stance. But how do we practically go about developing this internal control? It sounds like a daunting task.
The book offers a range of insightful techniques. One involves consciously focusing on what we can control rather than dwelling on things outside our sphere of influence. It's about shifting our attention away from anxieties and worried and channeling our energy towards constructive action.
Okay, that resonates with the idea of focusing on solutions rather than problems. But our thoughts can often be the biggest obstacle to inner peace. How does the book address this?
Another powerful technique involves challenging negative thoughts and replacing them with more constructive ones. It's about recognizing that our thoughts aren't always an accurate reflection of reality and learning to reframe them in a more helpful light.
So it's about becoming aware of our thought patterns and actively choosing more empowering perspective. I can see how this ties into the concept of mindfulness that we discussed earlier.
You're exactly right. Mindfulness plays a vital role in developing internal control. By cultivating present moment awareness, we can observe our thoughts and emotions without getting swept away by them. This creates space for us to make conscious choices about how we respond to challenges.
Right, it's like creating a pause button between a stimulus and our reaction, allowing us to make more intentional choices. But internal control isn't just about willpower and mental discipline, is it? The book seems to emphasize the importance of self-compassion as well.
Self-compassion is a crucial aspect of internal control. The book encourages us to treat ourselves with kindness and understanding, especially when we make mistakes or face setbacks. Instead of beating ourselves up, we can acknowledge our imperfections without judgment and move forward with grace.
That's such a vital message. It's so easy to get caught in a cycle of self-criticism. But cultivating self-compassion allows us to break free from that negativity and approach ourselves with greater acceptance. It seems like developing internal control is an ongoing journey, not a destination we reach overnight.
Absolutely. It requires consistent effort and dedication, but the rewards are immeasurable. As we cultivate greater inner peace and stability, we become better equipped to navigate life's inevitable challenges with resilience and perspective.
So internal control is about finding that balance between taking responsibility for our actions and extending grace to ourselves when we stumble. It's a powerful concept that seems intricately linked to overall well-being. But we've covered a lot of ground in this part. Is there anything else you'd like to highlight before we move on?
I think it's important to emphasize that these habits aren't isolated practices. They work synergistically, reinforcing each other and creating a positive upward spiral. For instance, cultivating mindfulness enhances our ability to prioritize happiness, make generous choices, and develop internal control.
Right. It's not about perfecting one habit in isolation, but rather about weaving these practices together into a holistic approach to life. And speaking of holistic approaches, we touched upon the concept of smart trust in the last part. Can we delve deeper into that now?
Absolutely. Smart trust is a fascinating and nuanced approach to building healthy relationships. It's about recognizing that trust is essential for connection and happiness, but also acknowledging the need for discernment and wisdom in who we choose to trust.
It strikes that balance between being open and guarded, which can be tricky to navigate. The book seems to suggest that people are inherently more trustworthy than we tend to assume. Is that accurate?
Research supports this idea. We often overestimate the risks associated with trusting others. Our negativity bias skews our perception, leading us to focus on potential threats and betrayals rather than recognizing the inherent goodness in most people.
So how do we overcome this negativity bias and cultivate a more trusting outlook?
One practical strategy is to actively look for evidence of trustworthiness in others. Instead of assuming the worst, we can challenge our assumptions and seek out examples of integrity, reliability, and kindness in our interactions. This shift in focus can have a profound impact on how we perceive and experience relationships.
Okay, that makes sense. It's about consciously choosing to look for the good in people rather than automatically expecting the worst. But what about when trust is broken? How do we navigate those painful experiences?
The book emphasizes the importance of minimizing the pain of being cheated. This doesn't mean becoming naive or allowing ourselves to be repeatedly taken advantage of. It's about developing resilience and the ability to forgive.
We touched upon forgiveness earlier in the context of self-compassion. How does forgiveness play a role in navigating broken trust?
Forgiveness is a powerful act of liberation. It's about releasing ourselves from the burden of anger, resentment, and bitterness that can linger after a betrayal. It doesn't mean condoning harmful behavior, but rather choosing to let go of the negative emotions that keep us tethered to the past.
That's a profound perspective. It suggests that forgiveness is ultimately an act of self-care. a way to free ourselves from the emotional weight of past hurts. But is there anything we can proactively do to foster trustworthiness in others?
Absolutely. The book offers several practical suggestions for creating an environment that encourages trustworthy behavior. One key suggestion is to be trustworthy ourselves. It's about modeling the behavior we want to see in others, demonstrating integrity, reliability, and honesty in our interactions.
So it's about leading by example, creating a ripple effect of trust through our actions. Are there other proactive steps we can take?
The book also emphasizes the importance of setting clear expectations and boundaries in our relationships. This helps create a sense of safety and predictability, making it easier for others to understand how to engage with us in a trustworthy manner. By clearly communicating our needs and expectations, we reduce the potential for misunderstanding and misinterpretations that can erode trust.
Right, so clear communication is often the foundation of healthy and trusting relationships. It seems like the key to smart trust is finding that sweet spot between vulnerability and discernment, between being open to connection and protecting ourselves from potential harm.
You've captured it perfectly. It's a delicate balance and it requires ongoing awareness and effort. But cultivating smart trust can lead to richer, more fulfilling relationships and greater happiness overall. We've covered a lot of ground in this part of our deep dive. Do you think there's anything else we should explore before moving on?
Well, I think we've touched upon the most crucial aspects of smart trust. We've explored how to overcome our negativity bias, cultivate resilience in the face of betrayal, and proactively foster trustworthiness in others. It's been a fascinating and insightful journey into this essential element of happiness.
I agree. We've explored a range of practical strategies that listeners can apply to their own lives. Remember, building trust is an ongoing process and it requires both vulnerability and wisdom. But by embracing the principles of smart trust, we can create a more connected and fulfilling social experience.
This has been a truly enlightening exploration of the habits outlined in Raghunathan's book. There's delved into prioritizing happiness, cultivating generosity, gaining internal control, and exercising smart trust. These habits, when woven together, offer a powerful framework for living a more joyful and meaningful life. But our journey isn't over yet. There's still so much more to uncover as we continue our deep dive into the science of happiness. Join us for the final part as we explore the remaining habit and synthesize all that we've learned into a practical roadmap for cultivating greater well-being. Welcome back to the deep dive. In this final part, we're going to try to tie everything together, all the fascinating threads we've uncovered. From Raghunathan's book, If You're So Smart, Why Aren't You Happy? We've talked about the sins that, kind of sabotage our joy and the habits that can, I guess you could say, pave the way to a more fulfilling life.
It's been a really interesting conversation, hasn't it? We've gone pretty deep into some concepts like prioritizing happiness, embracing generosity, mastering internal control, cultivating smart trust. These habits aren't just abstract ideas, though. They're practical tools we can use to shape our experiences and cultivate lasting well-being.
I want to explore the rest of the habits and discover how they all fit into this intricate tapestry of happiness. We left off talking about mindfulness, which seemed particularly relevant in today's world of constant distractions and information overload. Is there anything else to uncover about mindfulness and its connection to happiness?
Well, mindfulness is a practice with really profound implications for our well-being. One of the most common misconceptions is that it requires us to empty our minds or achieve some state of blissful detachment. The book says that's a myth. Mindfulness is simply about paying attention to the present moment without judgment.
So it's not about escaping reality, but rather fully engaging with it in a non-judgmental way. I can see how that would be valuable. But I still wonder how we can practically cultivate this state of mindful awareness.
The book emphasizes that mindfulness is a practice, not a destination. It's a skill we develop through consistent effort, much like learning to play an instrument or speak a new language. And like any skill, the more we practice, the more proficient we become. One of the simplest yet most effective techniques is focusing on the breath.
I've heard that before, but I'm curious why it's considered such a cornerstone of mindfulness practice. What makes the breath so special?
The breath is a remarkable tool for cultivating mindfulness because it's always present, constantly changing, readily accessible. By focusing on the sensations of the breath, the coolness of the inhale, the warmth of the exhale, the gentle rise and fall of the chest, we anchor ourselves in the present moment.
That sounds simple, but I can see how directing our attention to the breath could help quiet the mental chatter and bring us back to the here and now. Does the book offer any insights into the benefits of this practice?
Oh, there's a ton of research on mindfulness studies show that it can reduce stress, improve sleep quality, enhance cognitive function, and even strengthen our immune system. It's a powerful tool for cultivating both mental and physical well-being.
Those are some impressive benefits. It seems like mindfulness is more than just a trendy wellness practice. It's a scientifically backed approach to enhancing our overall well-being.
Exactly. It's a gift we can give ourselves, a way to cultivate inner peace and resilience amidst the challenges of life.
Okay, shifting gears a bit, we've talked about smart trust as a crucial habit for happiness. Is there anything more to explore regarding this concept?
Smart trust involves finding the balance between being open and guarded, extending trust, and protecting ourselves from potential harm. The book offers practical strategies for navigating this delicate balance.
We've already discussed some of those strategies, like reminding ourselves that people are generally more trustworthy than we assume, and learning to minimize the pain of being cheated. Are there any other key insights the book highlights?
One really important strategy involves eliciting trustworthy behavior from others. It might sound like a tall order, but the book provides specific techniques for fostering an environment that encourages trust.
Okay, that sounds intriguing. What can we do to inspire trustworthiness in others? It seems like trust is a two-way street, but is there anything we would do to pave the way for more trustworthy interactions?
One of the most powerful things we can do is be trustworthy ourselves. It's about leading by example, demonstrating integrity, reliability, and honesty in our interactions. When we consistently embody these qualities, we create a ripple effect, inspiring others to reciprocate that trust.
It's like they're saying walking the talk, isn't it? Our actions speak louder than words. And when we act in a trustworthy manner, we create a foundation for genuine connection and collaboration.
Exactly. But it's not just about being a good person. The book also emphasizes the importance of setting clear expectations and boundaries in our relationships. This helps create a sense of safety and predictability, making it easier for others to understand how to engage with us in a trustworthy manner.
That makes sense. Clear communication is so crucial in any relationship. By clearly articulating our needs and expectations, we minimize the potential for misunderstandings and misinterpretations that can erode trust.
Exactly. When we're upfront about our boundaries and communicate assertively, we create a framework for healthy and respectful interactions. This fosters an environment where trust can flourish.
Okay, this has been such a great discussion of smart trust, and it brings us to our final habit. In the last part, we briefly touched upon the concept of dispassionate pursuit of passion, which seemed a bit paradoxical. Can we unpack this idea a little more?
The book says that true fulfillment doesn't come from desperately clinging to specific outcomes, but rather from embracing the journey itself. Dispassionate pursuit of passion is about pursuing our goals and dreams with enthusiasm and dedication while simultaneously detaching from the need to control the results.
That sounds like finding the balance between striving and surrender. Passion is inherently about intensity and drive. How can we reconcile that with this idea of detachment?
Passion and detachment aren't mutually exclusive. Think of a skilled surfer riding a wave. They approach the wave with passion and skill, but they also understand that they can't control the ocean's movements. They ride the wave with grace and flexibility, adapting to its unpredictable nature.
That's such a good analogy. It perfectly captures the essence of this concept. It's about embracing uncertainty and finding joy in the unfolding of our journey, regardless of whether we reach a specific destination.
Exactly. When we release the need to micromanage every outcome, we free ourselves to experience the richness of the present moment and appreciate the beauty of unexpected twists and turns.
This idea of dispassionate pursuit of passion is great. It's a liberating perspective that allows us to pursue our dreams without being crippled by fear of failure or disappointment.
It's about finding fulfillment in the process rather than solely focusing on the end goal. It's about enjoying the ride, knowing that the journey itself is where the true magic lies.
Well, this concludes our deep dive into the science of happiness. We've explored a lot from Raghunathan's book, uncovering the sins that hinder our well-being and the habits that propel us towards more fulfilling life.
It's been a fantastic journey. We've got deep into important concepts like prioritizing happiness, embracing generosity, mastering internal control, practicing mindfulness, cultivating smart trust, and pursuing our passions with detachment. These habits, when woven together, create a really powerful tapestry of well-being.
As we wrap up, I'd love to offer our listeners a concise recap of the key takeaways. What are the 10 most important points we've uncovered?
Okay, here are 10 key insights from our exploration. Prioritize happiness. Make happiness a conscious goal, not just a byproduct of other pursuits. Embrace generosity. Giving to others is a surprisingly powerful way to boost your own happiness. Master internal control. Focus on what you can control and cultivate the ability to regulate your thoughts and emotions. Practice mindfulness, pay attention to the present moment without judgment, and observe your thoughts and feelings with curiosity. Cultivate smart trust. Find the balance between being open and guarded, extending trust while protecting yourself from harm. Pursue your passions with detachment. Embrace the journey and find joy in the process regardless of the outcome. Challenge negative thoughts. Recognize that your thoughts aren't always accurate and reframe them in a more helpful light. Practice self-compassion. Treat yourself with kindness and understanding, especially when you make mistakes. Set clear expectations and boundaries. Communicate your needs assertively to foster healthy and respectful interactions. And remember that happiness is a practice. It's an ongoing journey that requires effort and dedication, but the rewards are immeasurable.
Those are 10 powerful points to remember. We've covered a lot, but I encourage you to revisit these key insights and explore how you can integrate them into your own life.
And remember, happiness isn't a passive state, it's an active pursuit. It requires conscious effort and a willingness to challenge ingrained patterns of thinking and behavior. But with dedication and practice, you can cultivate a more joyful, fulfilling, and meaningful life.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the science of happiness. We hope you've gained valuable insights and practical tools to enhance your well-being. Until next time, may you find joy in the present moment and embrace the journey ahead with a heart filled with happiness.